Thank you, Eric, for that introduction. I really appreciated it. And honestly, it's wonderful to see so many members of the Liberal Climate Caucus here, as well as to see so many people I've had the chance to work on environment and climate change with in the past. So thank you for all coming out here today. And I also just want to thank the Canadian Climate Institute for inviting me to say a few words at this event, just to talk a bit more about our government's approach to climate action. It's always really inspiring when I get to be in a room with a lot of people who really care and think about how we're going to meet these moments of challenge that we're facing right now. But before I go further, I do want to acknowledge that we're gathered on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. I'll say I always have a bit of a challenge when we do land acknowledgements, that it sounds like I'm just doing a checkbox, so I'll just take a moment to actually say it's really important, particularly when we're talking about climate action, that we take a moment to think very much about the history of the lands that we're on and the people who have traditionally cared for it, and our obligations going forward to Indigenous people as well. Okay, so look, I think that Eric touched on it a little bit. Like, we're at a really pivotal moment, and the world is changing fast around us. There are significant shifts that are happening in the domestic and international landscapes, and they're really driving the need for us to rethink Canada's economic and environmental policies. Together, we're facing economic upheaval driven by tariff threats, global geopolitical instability, and and as this was mentioned by Eric as well, environmental and climate crises at home and around the world. So my job as a Minister of Environment, in some ways, that job has never been more clear. It also presents opportunities, and that's where I'm trying to very much bring the conversation. Look, when we're talking about taking action to fight climate change, we need to really look at how do we build a unifying, pragmatic, and durable policy on environment. It's one that can stand the test of time by building the physical infrastructure now alongside with the regulatory certainty. We need to have the two side by side, and we need to have the policy works in a way that it empowers Canadians to see themselves as part of these future greener opportunities. I know that we must meet these challenges that we're facing today with pragmatism, but I also really want to highlight we need to meet them with ambition to secure the solutions that we do need for our country for tomorrow. So if I was going to take a second to kind of set out my vision when I'm thinking about this, my vision for the opportunities for the future for our country is that we have a country that's powered by clean electricity, where we switch away from combustion in how we heat and cool our homes and how we power our transportation. That the job opportunities that we are creating in this country moving forward are in clean tech. I mean, Canada regularly sits very high when we look at the global 100 tech lists, clean tech lists for the world. Canada really does punch above its weight. So how do we make sure that we're not only staying at the forefront of that, but that we're also selling this clean tech globally, and that we continue with jobs in all of the pieces that we need to move towards a clean economy? And that includes critical minerals, it includes clean, low-carbon manufacturing. And that's why we've been focused on building and investing in that future. An example, if I was going to give an example to ground that, is our latest automobile strategy. The automobile strategy at its heart is an electric vehicle strategy. And so when we're talking about how do we build these industrial opportunities for our country, when we talk about what we do to support tariff-impacted parts of our country's economy, how do we then refocus on how do we build that, our future of that, in a way that actually puts climate at the center of it? Our new government's approach to climate action is embedded in a growth agenda, and I would say that that is in every minister's portfolio, from defense to environment. So if we talked about major projects, and we've often talked about the Major Projects Office, some of the projects that have been referred to include Iqaluit Hydro, Darlington Nuclear, the Northwest Corridor, Wind West, And my personal favorite, particularly today when I'm trying to figure out, like, you know, how do we get between our communities, high-speed rail. Like, these are opportunities to build the physical infrastructure that moves us forward, and it makes it real and tangible as we move forward. And I think there's a lot more that I get excited about when we talk about that. When we talk about affordable housing investments that we're making through Build Canada Homes, it includes within it, the criteria includes sustainability and the structure of how we build those homes. It looks like I mentioned when we talk about the auto strategy, where we're providing rebates for Canadians to be able to purchase the vehicles. We're talking about how do we expand our network for charging infrastructure, but also the tax credits and super deductions so that we're building these EVs here at home. They're very much embedded in the center of the policy. And then there's the part about the climate competitiveness strategy as a whole. And in that, it's really the focus is creating increased certainty. Like, we've committed to a stronger industrial carbon pricing system. Industry tells me all the time that it's so necessary that we have that to make sure that they have the certainty to move forward. Just in December, we finalized enhanced methane regulations. That was on oil and gas, but we also expanded to landfills. That measure alone is 400 megatons, and then is a really significant shift forward. And then also on clean electricity. And that's not only about the regulations, but it's also about the tax incentives. I believe that we are going to be voting very shortly on Budget Implementation Act. It includes things like the investment tax credits that we can use for clean electricity. It's about a commitment to interties, and it's about how we build out the physical infrastructure I've been describing. Look, when we're talking about interties, just about a month ago or so, I was in Nova Scotia, where we were able to really celebrate continuing work to build the intertie between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And part of what we were there to celebrate was also the fact that through Indigenous loans, guarantees, and through the Canada Infrastructure Bank, it's actually also, there's Indigenous equity in this intertie. So moving forward in how do you build that physical infrastructure, how do you build it in the right way, and how do you continue to build out for clean electricity in our country? Partout dans le monde, les systèmes énergétiques évoluent plus rapidement que jamais. Les énergies renouvelables, l'électrification, les minéraux critiques et les technologies propres sont plus que des possibilités du futur. Tout cela constitue désormais l'épine dorsale de l'économie actuelle et de l'économie compétitive de demain. Tous les pays, tous les investisseurs, toutes les entreprises s'activent à s'adapter. Et les pays qui s'amorcent la transition vers les énergies propres attireront des capitaux, créeront des emplois bien rémunérés et renforceront leur renommée mondiale. Nous avons ici au Canada les ressources, les talents et l'innovation nécessaires pour prendre les devants. Alors, pensons entre autres à l'abondance de notre énergie hydroélectrique et nucléaire et notre énorme potentiel d'élargir la capacité éolienne et solaire, et aussi aux minéraux critiques essentiels pour la fabrication des batteries et des technologies propres. The transition to net zero by 2050 will require clean, reliable power. And we will be releasing in the coming weeks an electricity strategy that really will be establishing how we're working with provinces and territories to advance these goals by doubling Canada's grid capacity, ensuring that Canada's grid is clean and that the electricity demand, as the electricity demand continues to grow. As the Canadian Climate Institute has shown, because I read all of your reports, the Canadian Household Energy Wallet stands to benefit significantly from a future where clean electricity is a primary source of energy. Affordability and clean power advantage go hand in hand. And our workforce, our universities, our entrepreneurs are already building solutions that other nations will need to meet their commitments. One of the parts that I was most excited about in our budget, and I was excited about the climate competitiveness strategy, but I was really excited that we included was Ottawa Youth Climate Corps. I think that that's a part where we can actually also make sure that we're empowering young people to be able to get the skills and the opportunities in these jobs that help move towards climate competitivity, fight climate change, protect our environment. So our approach isn't just about what we build, it's about how we build. We are building in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs across the skilled trades and STEM. We are building, as I mentioned, inclusively in full partnership with First Nations, Inuit and Métis. We're building Canadian, and in this moment when we're talking about the tariff challenges, we're building Canadian. We're building with Canadian workers, with Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, and Canadian lumber. A really strong example of that, I'm gonna use put my Toronto hat on here for a second, but when we're building out transit in Toronto, when we're building subway cars for Line 2, we're doing that while making sure that the subway cars are being built in Thunder Bay and La Pocatière. Those are jobs in Canada, and it's also gonna help us. I'm a Line 2 person, not all of you. Just hands up, anybody here from Toronto? Okay, a few of you. If you are a Line 2 person, you know that it's really important we get these cars to get people excited about being on public transit. So it's a chance for us to make public transit more comfortable, more usable, and at the same time, we're actually supporting Canadian workers in our country. So that's an important part as well. We're building sustainably, driving hundreds of billions of dollars of investment to nuclear, hydro, wind, storage, green infrastructure, to position Canada to lead in a low-carbon economy. And that includes things like I've mentioned, but through super deductions, investment tax credits, by investments from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. We're sending clear signals to industry through the industrial carbon price and clean electricity regulations. All of that is how we position to move towards that cleaner economy. And look, if I was talking about why are we building sustainably, why do we need to do this? There are two reasons. And the first one that, as I'm talking, I never want us to lose sight of, is that there's a moral imperative to this. And I say this as a mother of 2 young women in their 20s. We need to do this for our own future, for the future of our next generations. We need to do it to preserve our communities and protect our communities from what we're seeing as increasing climate-related disasters. The second reason, which is the part that I've been focusing more in this conversation, is just that it's the greatest economic opportunity we have of our time. If we do it right, we can leapfrog as a country and have a strong economy. And when I say this, you only need to listen to the CEO of Algoma Steel, who right now Algoma Steel is converting to electric arc furnaces with the support of federal funding. And he talked about how making that switch will actually make his business more competitive. He actually said it in defending the industrial carbon price for people who are the naysayers out there. And the industrial carbon price was actually he was actually quite strongly fighting against people who are the naysayers. And at the same time, saying when I'm making this change, when he was making these changes to electric arc furnaces, it actually makes them more competitive. We need to keep on incentivizing that. As the world transitions to net zero, being low carbon will increasingly drive competitiveness in our industries. And we know this because by 2030, more than half of global consumers and businesses will choose low carbon products. By 2035, the clean technology market is projected to triple. And by 2050, electricity demand could double or even triple, and critical mineral demand could increase 5-fold. Last year, global investment in clean energy reached nearly $3 trillion, and that's almost double what was invested in fossil fuels. So there's a race at play here, and Canada really can't afford to stand still. Our plan recognizes the booming clean energy industries for what they are, which is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity to create new industries, successful businesses, and high-paying careers. And it recognizes that when you hear us talk about how we need to build Canada strong, at the same time, we must build Canada well. As I kind of wrap up, I just want to say this. Being in a room with a lot of people who are putting the thinking into how this happens, how do we make this work, is really important. And I really want to thank you for all of the work that you do to make this happen, all of the work that actually we rely on, I rely on, by reading the kinds of things that you put out there as to how to get this right. So I want to thank you for the work that you do. I really look forward to continuing to work together. Thank you.